Boker Tov. Today we're going to make matzah, and it's the perfect time to make matzah because Passover is almost here. And if you make matzah and learn how to do it, you might decide you want to make matzah for your family's Seder. So this is the matzah that I made this morning. And it's so easy and so fun to make. I'm going to walk you through it. So I'm going to put this down and let's see. I'm going to show you what you're going to need. First of all, let's make sure that you've washed your hands. I washed my hands. And I'm going to put on my apron. Then let me show you the things that you need to make matzah. You're going to need one bowl, a wooden spoon, a rolling pin, and a fork. I'll tell you about that in a minute. And your measuring cups. Now, when you make matzah, you only need 3 ingredients. When we made pita earlier this week, it was very much like making matzah, but we used 4 ingredients. If you remember, we used flour, salt, water, and yeast. But for matzah, we only use 3 of those 4 ingredients, and I bet you can figure out the one ingredient we don't use. If you're thinking we don't use yeast, you figured it out. Remember what yeast does? Remember how it rises and does little explosions? And it made our pita fluffy and puffy and kind of soft? Well, matzah is totally different, all because it doesn't have yeast. It's thin. I'm going to just pick it up because my hands are clean. And it's kind of crunchy or a little bit chewy. So it's a very different thing. Okay, let's get started. So I'm going to make just a little tiny bit of matzah because I've already made some. But when you're making it, you can make a lot. So for your adults to know, your grown-ups to know, the proportions are about 2 parts flour to 1 part water. I'm going to just do a little bit. So I'm just going to do, and this is not precise at all, I'm going to do about a 1/2 cup of flour. I'm putting that in there. And then I'm going to add about a 1/4 cup of water. And just pour it in. And you know, sometimes you need to add more water, sometimes you need to add more flour. I'm just stirring it, and I'm going to look and see and adjust as I need to. It looks a little bit, that would be too sticky, as you can see. So I'm going to add a little bit more flour. And we'll see what happens now. That's starting to look better. See how it's starting to pull away from the sides of the bowl? That's pretty good. But, you know, I still think it's a little sticky. So you can see it's a process. And you get to keep, you know, kind of figuring it out as you go. Okay. Once you get it so that it's not too sticky and you're really going to be able to handle it, this looks about right. But you're going to put some flour on your table or on a cutting board. Just kind of spread it around. And no, I still think this is too sticky. So you can see, sometimes you just have to work with it a lot. Okay, now I think this is better. And then I like to pull off a ball that's about this size, because I think that's easy to work with, but that's up to you. And then what I like to do, because I think this is fun, is I like to pound it with my hand. Pound it. And you can do that a lot if you want. And flatten it and smush it. And this is kind of all the same kind of thing we did when we were making the pita. But we want to make this be as flat as possible. And you can see how it kind of broke like that? It's okay. You want to keep making sure that there's flour on your surface, and then put a little flour on your rolling pin, and you're going to roll it so that it gets really thin. And if it starts to stick like it did there, just pull that off and kind of scrape it off with your fingers and get a little more flour on your rolling pin. Roll it some more. You want this to be nice and thin, and you can start with a smaller piece of dough and have a smaller matzah. So I'm trying to get this to be really thin. And it's okay if parts of it kind of come off. And then the part that I think is really fun is you get to take a fork and you're going to poke it a lot, and you can make it be in a pattern. I'm not. I'm just having fun poking it and just making lots of holes in it, but you could make a kind of pattern if you wanted. And after you've done it and you think you have a lot of good holes, you can sprinkle just a tiny bit of salt if you want. That's up to you. I'm just going to sprinkle a very little bit on. And then you're going to bake this in a very hot oven. I would suggest about 475, and you can put your oven rack at the very top of the oven, and you can take your baking sheet and put it in the oven so it's super hot before you even put the matzah on it. So if I were doing this, not showing you right now, this would already be in the oven, and then I would just have lifted up my matzah. Let's see. And sometimes it kind of breaks a little bit because the surface is a little bit sticky. So this is, this is real life matzah. It's kind of coming apart a little bit. Actually, I think I would probably start with a smaller ball to make it work better. But you can see this is kind of what happens. And then you're going to put it on your baking tray when it's really hot and then bake it. And again, this is the kind of thing where you just have to keep watching it. Maybe for about 3 minutes and then flip it for 3 more minutes. You're going to have to see. It might be a little bit longer than that. So that's the basic process. You might have something that looks kind of like this, or yours might look more elegant. But in any case, enjoy.